Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Mortal Engines? Stick around and find out. Ba 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 ba. All right. There was one moment in this movie that eye-rollingly reminded me of Star Wars. If you see it, I'll let you try and figure it out, but don't spoil it in the comments. All right. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Mortal Engines. This is the IMDb synopsis, by the way. It says, in a post-apocalyptic world where cities ride on wheels and consume each other to survive, two people meet in London and try to stop a conspiracy. A mysterious young woman, Hester Shaw, emerges as the only one who can stop a giant predator city on wheels, devouring everything in its path. Feral and fiercely driven by the memory of her mother, Hester joins forces with Tom Natsworthy. Is that his last name? Okay. An outcast from London, along with Anna Fang, a dangerous outlaw with a bounty on her head. Oh man, as I'm reading that, there's even more than I would have remembered about that seems to be pulling from Star Wars. Anyway, let's talk about the story, the script, the pacing and tone, stuff like that. I found this movie to come across as largely event-driven. Characters do have motivations, but they felt either too simplistic to me or not well enough explored for my preferences. The most interesting character to me was actually one of the antagonists, who has a nice character arc, but is gone by halfway through the movie. There are lots of moving parts, both visually and in the plot. I would say there's at least a handful of characters in this ensemble cast that felt unnecessary to me. I don't want to say totally. You would have had to do a little bit of rewriting to snip them out of the movie, but it wouldn't have been a lot of rewriting at all. I'm just thinking, why do we keep cutting away to these two? We don't need them. We don't need them. Why are these other people accompanying the two main protagonists on their journey? We don't need them, you know. Anyway, I would have preferred more focus and development on and with fewer characters. The world is certainly imaginative, and you can just see that from looking at the trailers, I imagine, but it seemed to lack a ton of internal logic to me. Why exactly do these cities need to be roaming the countryside? I mean, there was something in an opening monologue that oh gosh, and that's interesting, because there's the character that does the opening monologue. Yeah, I feel like there's some stuff that's unexplored here. Anyway, I don't want to get it. I'm getting sidetracked here. But there's stuff about in the opening monologue that kind of sets the stage of, you know, why the world is the way it is. And you could maybe infer from that maybe why cities are moving, but there is still like a lot of unanswered questions. And that's a big issue to me, because the fact that there are moving cities roaming around the countryside is like a huge part of the premise of the story. And so I keep asking myself, okay, why do these cities need to be staying on the move constantly again? Can someone explain that to me? Or another thing, if the mechanized Terminator guy, if you see the movie, you'll know who I'm talking about, that's hunting down the female lead, can quickly scramble across a pole in one shot, as happens very briefly. I'm like, whoa, he's moving fast there. Then why is he always slowly lumbering in every other scene? Why do characters talk instead of shooting the villain when they have the chance? Why do escape options seem to repeatedly, you know, surprisingly, almost by accident, appear to rescue the characters? And I think all of the answer to all those things boils down to the phrase style over logic. Sometimes I can be fine with that if I'm emotionally invested in the characters, but without that, I just see a lot of movie tropes and easy convenience written in for the heroes that completely take me out of the story and remove any tension I might have felt. When you don't establish limitations on technology or characters, when you don't establish cost for technology being able to do the things that it does, or boundaries, I mean, then just anything is possible, and there's no reason to fear that a character is going to die or something bad will happen to them, unless suddenly the writer decides, and now this is the scene where I want them to really be in trouble. You know, this is a world that, just looking at it, I'd love to walk around in. Give me the open world video game version of this, and I'm in. But I don't have patience to look at a visually fascinating world only in the way a director wants to show it to me through his camera lens, and only through the story that he's using that I don't care about. As far as the cast goes, a lot of new faces to me anyway, apart from Hugo Weaving, who plays the villain. I felt like all of their performances were solid. They had good emotional access, but what they were working with just repelled my investment in their characters again and again, unfortunately. As far as stunts and visuals go, this is a post-apocalyptic steampunk theme park ride. I mean, wow. The costumes, the sets, it's all a mishmash of junky and clean that was really interesting to me, just seeing the it reminded me a little bit of like the Adventures of Baron Munchausen or some. It definitely has what feels like British, a mix of British and maybe Australian film style sensibilities in terms of like what things look like, what the sets look like, and so it just felt like just kind of weird and wacky. I would have preferred, actually, with this design and with the issues that I had with like the internal logic, if it took place on a completely fantasy world instead of like future Earth. I think I would have been able to buy it a little bit more, or like not worry about the questions I had as much if I would have been like, well, who knows what the history of this world is? I'll just roll with it, you know. But anyway, it's just a interesting mashup visually of different elements. And it was so fully realized and detailed that I was at least a little curious to see what are they going to show me in the next scene? What's the next gadget or vehicle or costume or whatever going to look like? That said, I could play 2 hours of the BioShock trilogy again, and I think feel the same way, but have a much better time in the same amount of time spent playing those games. Visually spectacular, but that doesn't do as much for my aging, jaded eyes, you know, who have seen much, many sci-fi movies in my day, compared to, like, say, if I would have watched this when I was 13, which may be the audience that it's intended for, I don't know. As far as, like, the relevance factor, is there anything, of moral, philosophical, spiritual significance going on in this story that might trigger worthwhile thought or conversation? I don't know. Maybe there's some themes of conservation, in the environment and not being too consumeristic, or maybe themes of greed, or maybe things that they want to say about what international relations should be like. I'm not sure. They seem to want to touch on one or more political themes very, very briefly, but it's done so lightly and in such a fantastical setting, so far removed from our own world, that I don't hear a message that's loud or very clear either, or certainly that would be like new or said in a new way to me, either politically, which I'm usually not looking for anyway, and or like in terms of morality or philosophy. So I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Pater, skip this one, definitely in theaters. Maybe Redbox it instead, specifically to watch with your oldest son, because you are slowly introducing him to some PG-13 movies. I think this one would probably be a good fit for him. He won't care about the lack of internal logic at this point, or the missing character development either, I don't think, and you might at least enjoy watching him react to this movie. It's rated PG-13 for sequences of futuristic violence and action. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. By the way, I will be off-grid until January 8th. I'll still be putting out content each week, but I will not be responding to messages on YouTube until January 8th. So I apologize and appreciate your patience as I spend some time with my family, and actually before that getting ready to go fully off of work and spend time with my family. Next week's going to be a big crunch of work for me so that I can take a couple weeks off after that. Anyway, as always, I'd appreciate it if you would like, share, subscribe, click that notification bell, and then join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.